welcome back to the Conspiracy Couple podcast. I'm Marisa.
And I'm Ethan.
And today we have another very exciting topic to dive into with you guys. But before we get started, as always, make sure you're following us on all of our socials. We have Instagram, we have YouTube, and now we have a TikTok. Because
yes, we do.
That's where all the kids are at nowadays.
And us.
And us.
We are both also on TikTok.
Yeah. I don't even want to say how much time I spend on TikTok in the day.
No, you probably shouldn't.
It's been less since I've been binge watching Rain before they take it off Netflix. I don't have time for TikTok anymore.
I don't know if that's better, though.
Well, I mean, it's historical, so I'm kind of learning something. Not really.
Not
Anyways,
really.
TikTok, we have a TikTok. It is Conspiracy Couple Podcast. And once we start posting stuff on there, that's where you'll find, like, clips from our YouTube, any fun challenges that we come across that we think would be fun to do as a couple. And maybe I'll make a video of one of the conspiracy cats. Who knows?
Let us know what you want to see us do.
Let us know, because we are open to anything.
Yeah. I'm going to be working on getting some clips up there from our most recent episodes. Some of the better ones. Probably more like the funny or like really interesting things. But I'll be doing my best to get some good clips up there.
Yes. And like we said, we're open to anything. So if you're someone who likes reading and wants to talk about books, or you want to, talk about how I edit or whatever. Not edit. How I research.
How
Ethan edits.
I don't even think you know
we are super open and, interested in whatever you guys might want us to see or want to see from us on there. We also have YouTube. I already said that. If you're not watching us on YouTube, subscribe to us on YouTube. You'll get to see our faces, which might be a draw for some people. Unlikely, but you never know. So, any housekeeping updates before we get into it? No. This is going to be another two-parter. I just want to let y'all know. So be prepared. Again, we'll have this one, part 1, and then part 2 will come out a week from today.
I think they know how two-parters work. I think you're over-explaining this.
I know that's a pet peeve of yours. Is over-explanation.
So let's move on.
Okay.
This intro it doesn't need to be longer than this.
I just like to make things clear. Anyways.
So this is a two-parter. And what that means is that there's two parts. So this is you're listening to right now is the first part. So if you want to skip the first part, watch the second part, which is coming out next week.
Thanks. Anyways, so today, diving in without further ado, because Ethan wants to shorten our intros, we are going to be talking about a theory that I don't really know what the proper name for it is, but I'm just going to call it the theory of the 5 families that rule the world. 5 families. So Ethan, as always, have you heard anything about the 5 families that rule the world?
No.
No. Okay.
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay.
I think I've heard you talk about it. Like I feel like you've brought it up before, but I know nothing.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's a good place to start. So what I found when I was looking at the 5 families on Google, the first thing that came up was the 5 mafia families of New York. And that is not what we're going to be talking about today. Even though that does sound intriguing, and
maybe in the future
I do have an interest in the mafia, which is probably a little romanticized and unhealthy. We are not going to be talking about that. These 5 families are not confined to New York. They take over the whole world. So essentially, we are going to be doing a deep dive into the theory that everything that happens in America, potentially the world, both politically, financially, business-wise, all boils down to the influence of these 5 powerful families who are secretly or not so secretly pulling the strings behind the scenes. And so, of course, if you look at on Google, 5 families who control the world, it will give you a lot of lists about different families that have a lot of power and influence. And there are certainly more than 5 families that have a lot of power and influence in our world. But these are some that are, a list that what I've seen that have kind of been influential in specifically America since like the beginnings of our country. So these 5 families have been the center of many conspiracy theories for decades and centuries. And today we're going to look into each family and kind of talk about their beginnings and some of the theories surrounding them. And you'll probably remember, as you're hearing us go through, some of these will sound familiar. And so you might think, oh, I've heard this person's name in a previous episode. And so that's kind of what we're talking about. Yeah. And so according to theories, these are the people who are responsible for enacting the global agenda. And so you're probably hearing that and thinking
what is the global agenda?
Right. So if you're someone who's thinking that's what is the global agenda or what is that, or you might be like me and thinking that kind of sounds like the New World Order.
It does.
That theory of the New World Order.
Yeah.
We briefly discussed that in our episodes on the Illuminati, and it does kind of tie in with these 5 families, and it does tie in with the Illuminati. So the New World Order theory ties into a lot of theories. And so we are going to just kind of briefly touch on the New World Order theory. We're not going to, of course, do a deep dive into it because it is such a big theory that we could easily do multiple episodes on it. But we just kind of want to put in, or I wanted to put in a little bit of background information. So the idea of the New World Order is that the whole world is secretly, or there is the goal of having the whole world ruled by this one totalitarian government. And this government, works behind the scenes in every major world government and pulls the strings. And the goal is to bring the whole world under this one authoritarian rule when the time is right. So you think of, there are certain people who are placed in governments, who are placed in industry, like pop culture or in finance or in oil or energy. Those people are placed there for a reason, to have this power and influence, and they all work together. So some people believe that the Illuminati is behind this, some people believe that the Freemasons are behind this, and some believe that aliens are behind it. And so these families that we are going to discuss are all full of very influential and very wealthy and powerful people who have a large reach in the world of finance, industry, politics. And many people believe that members of these families are pushing towards this New World Order. And when we talk of very wealthy, the amount of wealth that these families have is like so much wealth that I could not even understand or fathom it. We're talking like billions and trillions of dollars. And regardless of who you think behind the scenes organization is, and regardless of whether you think it's the Illuminati or the Freemasons or even aliens, the bottom line is that it involves these elite members of society. When we think of the top, the people that are the most influential, those are who are behind the New World Order. And here's the thing. Most people who know about the idea of the New World Order or who have kind of talked about it or heard of it don't believe it's a conspiracy theory. They believe that it's a fact, that it's there is no question that there is this global agenda, and that the idea that it's just a conspiracy theory and that it's almost crazy is essentially gaslighting by the elites to make those who are in on it look crazy. Oh, you are onto us. No. You're the one who's crazy for even thinking about this. And I've probably said this in past episodes, but I do believe that there is some form of a New World Order or some group of people who want this totalitarian power. I don't know who it is, but I do believe that once you have power, you want more power. And
no, I think usually people who have power want to give it up.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
But I just think of okay, now that I've been watching historical shows for the last 3 days obsessively, it just kind of brings me back to the era of countries wanting to rule other countries and wanting to gather armies and having this idea of conquest of I want to have this empire. I want to have my throne be the biggest. And we think of the Roman Empire and the rule of the Catholic Church over Europe, and you just think of these people had power, they were kings of their own nation, but they didn't want to stop there. They wanted the next nation and the next one and the next one. And they wanted everyone under their rule. And so I just think powerful people want more power. And generally, governments can't be trusted because 99.999% of the time, people in power don't care about your interests. They care about, how am I going to get money? How am I going to get more power? How am I going to get what I want? And I think that, a lot of people want what they want. But this is the idea of there are these elites in society, and they are working behind the scenes to bring everyone under their rule, and they're going to be in total control. So having that kind of in the back of our mind, we're going to hear kind of the ideas of the New World Order, and we're going to hear, oh, this person could be in
I thought it was the 5 families.
It is. It's both.
You're confusing me.
So we had to do this thing about the New World Order so that when we talk about these 5 families and we talk about some of the theories surrounding them, it kind of makes a little bit more sense.
Okay.
So I hope that's more clear. Anyways, Ethan, don't worry about it. I just had to bring that up because when we talk about some of these families, what people will say, this family is the New World Order.
Okay.
Yes. So, without further ado, and without confusing Ethan anymore, I'm going to list off these names.
Okay.
And I want you to tell me if any of these names sound familiar to you.
Okay.
Okay. So, these 5 families that we're going to be talking about are the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, DuPonts, and the Bush family.
Well, the Bush, yeah, for sure. The Rockefeller. Didn't we talk about we talked about the disappearance of the Rockefeller?
Yep.
Who was that?
Michael
Rockefeller. So we talked about him, so I recognize that name as well. Rothschild, sounds familiar, but I couldn't tell you anything or why it sounds familiar. DuPonts and Morgans, nothing.
Okay. All right. Okay. So first family. We are talking about first the Rothschild family. So if you have any experience in the world of conspiracy theories or any knowledge of kind of this topic, I'm sure you've heard the Rothschild family or the name Rothschild pop up. So the Rothschild family is considered to be the wealthiest family in the world, with some estimates saying that they are worth $500 billion, while others believe they are worth hundreds of trillions of dollars instead, but that they put their money in various trusts and accounts, and so you can't really know how much they're worth. So when did the Rothschild family become the influential family that they are now? So Meyer Rothschild was the one who kind of put his family on the map. And he started out as an apprentice at a bank in Hamburg, Germany, but soon had risen to be one of the most influential figures in banking in Europe. So initially, he was planning on becoming a rabbi. Oh. However, after his father's death, he entered into the banking apprenticeship, which changed the course of his life forever. And he did rise to the position of being the court Jew for the German monarchy, which sounds very weird.
Yes, it does.
The court Jew. It sounds very weird, but it was considered to be a position of honor for that person, in which the court Jew was the person who was in charge of handling the banking for the country. And in one of the videos I watched, they explained it as I don't remember if it was Catholicism, you couldn't work in certain money exchanging, or you couldn't lend and borrow money, but Jewish people could. And so they would hire a Jewish person to handle the banking of the country. Okay. And you would be the court Jew. Which I was like...
That just sounds so bad.
It does sound very bad. But this was a huge honor for him.
Okay.
So
Confirm, I guess.
It was an honor for him and an honor for his family. So his goal, and this was well known, that he had this goal for himself and his family, and that he would work with reigning houses. So all of those who had political authority, he would work with the different monarchies, I guess monarchy is just king or queen. And he would engender this political authority and this goodwill among the ruling classes, and he would father as many sons as possible who would do the same. So his goal was that he would have influence over as many political powers as possible, and that he would have as many sons as possible who would then go on and do the same and establish their family in other countries.
Okay.
So he had 5 sons. And he made sure that when his sons came of age, he installed each of them in a different place in Europe's banking and financial world, ensuring that his family did not just have influence in Germany, but all over the continent. So he also made sure that his money, his family money, was not spread out too widely. So all of his sons' marriages were arranged. And typically, he would arrange their marriages to other members of the family. So cousins. You will notice that a lot when we talk about these 5 families. So to me, when I was researching that, it sounded like the pharaohs. When the pharaohs would marry their cousins or siblings to keep the godhood or deity in the family.
Yeah.
So for him, he's making sure, I don't want my money too far out. Keep it all in the family. He also prevented any female descendants from having a full inheritance in his will. So it would only go to his sons.
Wow.
So his 5 sons were named Amschel, Solomon, Nathan, Carl, and Jacob. Amschel stayed with his father in Frankfurt to run that branch, while his other sons were placed in London, Paris, Vienna, and Naples, respectively, all by the year 1820. So basically, they became known for lending money to different world governments, which would be seen as a good thing for the economy, because, you know, you're giving the government money, the government can then put more of that money into the economy for the citizens. However, when you are loaning money to the government, it kind of creates this you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just think of, like, historically, the monarchy was only as wealthy as their nobles. And they only had the resources that their nobles gave them. And so the nobles a lot of times would kind of be behind the scenes controlling things, because they're like, oh, well, you want grain? Do what I want. I'll give you grain. And they were known for loaning millions and billions of dollars to countries like Britain and France, having loaned money to both countries in the same war. So in this war, the 2 of them were fighting against each other.
Yeah.
They loaned money to both sides. And just think of this, okay, because he has sons in both of these countries.
Right.
So one thing that they were known for was helping finance many of the wars that raged throughout Europe, which kind of led them to be known as warmongers, or, you know, war profiteers, which they were. And they lent $10 billion to England in the war against Napoleon Bonaparte. And they were so well connected that there was a rumor throughout Europe that they actually knew about Napoleon's defeat before the British government did.
Interesting.
And that Nathan, the son who supposedly witnessed the defeat at Waterloo, rushed back to London to take advantage of the change in the stock market before anyone else could find out about it.
Interesting.
However, that's a rumor, and the rumor was apparently proven false, as Nathan wasn't in Waterloo at the time. And the rumor was started in an anti-Semitic pamphlet against the Rothschild family, written by an anonymous author who went by the name Satan.
Solid.
Solid, yes. Maybe let's not listen to people who call themselves Satan.
Agreed.
So not only did they make money by loaning money to different monarchies during times of war, but they also made money by selling and smuggling needed goods during wartime. So some of these included wheat, cotton, produce, and weapons. So think of, like, remember, like, if you have heard about in, like, the World War II, there were these rations. So you could only have so much of this and so much food, and you had to grow these gardens to send out, like, goods to the soldiers. So the Rothschilds would hoard these things and then sell them during times of war when people desperately needed them. However, shortly after this Waterloo pamphlet came out, the one written by Satan, another pamphlet came out that was called Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And this came to be known as a forgery, but it basically claimed to report the meeting minutes of a group of powerful Jewish leaders who got together to plan world domination. So after this defeat in Waterloo that they have made hundreds of millions of dollars off of, another pamphlet comes out that says there is a group of Jewish people who want to plan world domination. So when the Industrial Revolution came, they were able to adapt their businesses and continue to grow by entering into the oil and metal business, as well as investing in coal, iron, and the railroad. So Meyer's sons had sons who continued to grow the family business. However, the only banks that were remaining after World War II were the branches in London and Paris. But by this time, they had also grown in political power, as they were citizens of the respective countries they lived in and had grown up in this world of political influence. So members of the Rothschild family were among the first Jewish people to enter British Parliament and the British peerage, which were these big places of honor. So currently, conspiracy theorists believe that the Rothschilds maintain the global power that they had through the central bank Federal Reserve, and that they control every central bank in the world.
Wow.
And if you look at it, that was kind of the goal.
Right.
That was Meyer's goal the whole time. I want to control all of the financial headquarters in Europe. So then what happens when he finishes with Europe? He's not going to be like, okay, well, that's good. I guess we'll call it a day. Yeah.
I'm no longer ambitious.
I set out what I accomplished. And then I just think, okay, well, Amschel stayed in Frankfurt to help his dad.
Yeah.
So what was Amschel's goals? Like, what was he wanting to do? And so many people think that they are part of the New World Order because of their ability to control almost all of the world's wealth.
Yeah.
And just because the banks closed in the majority of the countries they were in, it doesn't mean that they're not still embedded in the elite classes of those countries.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because, like, this person was in Parliament.
Right.
Like, that's kind of a big deal.
Right.
So just because there was no bank there or in a certain place anymore doesn't mean that they're not still, like, the aristocrats.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the things that people think that the Rothschild family might be responsible for?
Let's go.
Assassinating JFK. So we did an episode on the JFK assassination. It was one of our first episodes. But there are a lot of theories as to who was actually responsible for JFK's killing. And if you listen to that one, that is a theory that actually Ethan and I both believe in.
It's true.
So if you want to hear one where Ethan is actually convinced by some of the things I say, listen to the JFK assassination one. So why would the Rothschild family want JFK out of the picture? So apparently he was about to invade Cuba. Mm-hmm. And if he did this, that would put an end to the sugar trade. Obviously, if JFK has soldiers come in and invade Cuba, it was Castro. It was not going to be like, okay, yeah, keep getting our sugar and making money off of us.
Right.
And the Rothschild family was apparently making quite a bit of money off of the sugar trade. Because remember, they were able to traffic in goods and produce and that kind of thing. Another theory that they could have been behind was Abraham Lincoln's assassination.
Oh.
And the idea here is kind of similar to JFK, but that they were prepared to take out any opposition or threat to the centralized banking system. And they might have perceived Lincoln as a threat to that. They also believe that they could have financed 9/11. I didn't see too much about that one. They also think that they could have been responsible for the sinking of the Titanic.
Okay.
So if you remember on our episode on the Titanic, there was the theory that the Rothschilds were behind the sinking of the Titanic.
Maybe that's where I've heard the name before.
In an attempt to kill 3 critics of the creation of the Federal Reserve: Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus, and John Jacob Astor. However, 2 of these men had never publicly taken a position on the issue, and one supported it. Okay. So we kind of discussed that in ours. People also think that they are able to control the weather. So this stemmed from the 2011 purchase of a controlling stake of the Weather Channel by a member of the Rothschild family. And some people believe that this was just them wanting to expand their media holdings, while others claim that they were wanting to purchase the company to somehow control the weather and profit off of natural disasters.
I don't think the Weather Channel picks the weather. I think they just report it.
No, every day the Weather Channel goes online and they go into their what weather should it be today.
And they just decide what weather it's going to be.
And they roll the dice and then they press the button.
They roll the dice?
They roll the dice. They press the button, or if they're feeling especially nefarious, then they create like a natural disaster. Anyways.
I don't think that's true.
So conspiracy theorists believe that somehow the Rothschild family creates natural disasters and then report on them and profit off of them. So how do they control the weather? So the bottom line is I am not really sure. But one theory I saw stated that it was through electrical waves that were sent out into the environment that could cause things like hurricanes or other strange weather patterns.
Electrical waves?
Yes.
Causing hurricanes.
I don't really know how weather works.
It don't work like that.
Well, that's what they think that the Rothschilds might be about.
That's a lot of work, though, to control the weather.
Well, if you have a lot of employees.
How many employees could they possibly have?
I don't know. If you have a lot of family members and you have a lot of employees.
If you are if you are controlling the weather, Mr. or Mrs. Rothschild, could you just like make it nice over here in where we live in Washington? Just make it nice for a while.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to be nice for the next couple of days.
I know, we're not going to say anything about what you do, you know? Just make it nice over here.
My birthday is coming up, and I would really like to have some sunshine,
yeah,
but not too much warmth on my birthday when I'm at the winery with my friends. So if you guys can make that happen, that'd be great. People who are skeptics about this say that many of the theories against them are nothing more than anti-Semitism.
Yeah, that seems
and
fair.
Again, and them saying that it's kind of like the Jewish people using their wealth for global. Yeah. So it's a typical anti-Semitic idea that people say that Jewish people want to control the world's money.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people say that the theories against them are rooted in anti-Semitism.
Makes sense.
Which is kind of true because we did have those two.
Right.
Some of the first theories that came out about them were known to be anti-Semitic.
As soon as the title Court Jew was put out there, I was expecting some anti-Semitism.
I will say, I think both things can be true at the same time.
What?
That anti-Semitism is real, and that this family has been the victim of a lot of anti-Semitism throughout history. However, they have a huge amount of wealth and power.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, but the thing is that it's not because they're Jewish. They just are also happen to be Jewish. So
right.
That's where the anti-Semitism thing is. It's like, just because they're Jewish doesn't mean that they're rich and powerful. They are rich and powerful, and they also happen to be Jewish. That's where the line between anti-Semitism and like the theory actually behind it should be. But then there's also people who do believe and are crazy that because they are Jewish, they are rich and powerful, which is anti-Semitic.
Or that they want more power.
Yeah.
I don't think that, like, yes, they are the victim of anti-Semitism, which is wrong. And they are wealthy.
Thank you for saying that.
Your hot take. Anti-Semitism is not a good thing
Wow,
to be.
you heard it here first.
But at the same time, I also think that you can be critical of people who are wealthy and powerful and be like, what are they using with, like, how are they using their power? How are they using their influence?
Just don't say it's because they're Jewish and then you're fine.
Right.
Like, don't ever say that. Like, that's just kind of like, it's like a rule of thumb.
Hot take.
Don't say that. Don't say anything about someone. Oh, they're this way because of their race. They're this way because of their gender. They're this way because of this, that, and that. Just be like, they want power. They want money. They have a lot of influence.
What are they doing with it?
Exactly. Leave everything else out of it. You got a nice, solid, happy, family-friendly theory right there.
A family-friendly theory.
That's what we're all about.
World domination.
Here. Yeah, we're all about family-friendly theories about how people are trying to rule the world.
That's a good clip for our TikTok.
Okay.
Anyway, so we talked about how a lot of their theories are rooted in anti-Semitism and how it both can be true at once.
We said that, yeah.
We said that. So a lot of people also say that they don't have as much power and influence now as they did a few generations ago. Mm-hmm. They have less money now than they did a few generations ago.
Yep.
However, the whole idea is that they are hiding the majority of their wealth. And they are controlling things from behind the scenes. It's not so much, especially in the media age, that they're out and about, except on the Weather Channel, that they're out and about obviously like flaunting their millions and billions of dollars. It's more so that they have it and they're hiding it.
Yeah.
And we don't know how much they actually have.
Right.
And I do think that it's easy, especially when you have people living in various countries, to hide money and hide assets. Like, it's not...
Offshore bank accounts, right?
Yes, it's not a novel concept.
I don't even know what an offshore bank account is. I've just heard it said.
It's a bank account that's not offshore.
Yeah, right.
It's like one of those ones
It's
you
like
can't, touch.
It's an island bank.
It is an island bank, yes.
There's like a bank
I feel like an
floating in the
offshore bank
sea.
account is, like, specifically one that, like...
I mean, I'm sure it just is, like, off the
It's
books.
outside of
Yeah.
extradition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So that's the Rothschild family. Okay. Family number 2. The Rockefeller family. So, I'm sure you're thinking, you're watching 30 Rock right now.
Oh, I am. Oh! Yo, I didn't even make that connection.
I was, like, wondering why you didn't say that.
It's
It's 30 Rockefeller Plaza.
I am stupid. That's my reasoning.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Now I'm feeling I'm seeing the connection there.
I went to New York in college.
Flex.
And I saw the Rockefeller Plaza, and I have a really cute picture of me and my sister in front of the ice rink.
Okay.
It was really cool.
Weird flex, but
a weird flex.
fine.
Yeah, no biggie. It was my mom wouldn't let me go on the Gossip Girl tour, so that's kind of a bummer. But anyways, so the first member of the Rockefeller family to put the family on the map was John D. Rockefeller.
John D.
I'm sure you've heard that name before. Not John B. John D.
Keep going.
So John D. was born in rural New York, and his father was a con man, and his mother was supposedly super religious.
Ah, that's quite the combo.
Yes, that's quite the combo. I'm like, huh.
Yeah.
How did
he conned her?
That makes sense, because at first I was like, how did she? I don't know.
Anyway.
So his dad was William Rockefeller.
The con man?
The con man.
Okay.
So he was known for traveling around and selling fake medicine to people while pretending to be deaf and mute. And later in his life, he pretended to be a doctor and continued to treat people, though he had no medical knowledge or expertise.
Not great.
No, that made me really mad while I was reading.
As a medical professional?
As a medical professional, I was like, I hate you, William Rockefeller. You suck. Anyways, I could go on a rant about that. So apparently, he had his religious wife, and he had John D. And he also apparently got a second wife.
Oh boy.
At some point, alongside fathering many illegitimate children.
What a guy.
And he kept his two families completely separate from each other.
Wow.
So his families did not know about each other.
Were they both named Rockefeller?
I don't know. Oh. Probably. So that was William. So his son, John D., is the one that kind of puts them on the map.
Okay, good.
So
move away from William. We don't need him.
He founded the Standard Oil Company in 1870 with a friend and his brother, William.
Ah.
Yes, another William. So this...
His friend's brother is
No,
named
his
William?
friend and his own brother.
Oh. And what's the friend's name?
I don't know.
Good research.
Friend doesn't matter.
He helped start the company.
This is the Rockefeller family. This is not friends of the Rockefeller family.
Well, I'm sorry for wanting to know all the information.
So, this company was groundbreaking for the time because his company refined crude oil, which, while the rest of the oil focus was on finding oil and then pumping it out of the ground. And he was the first company to refine the oil they got out of the ground.
Oh, so like make it good.
Yes. Clean it up, if you will.
They just like used bad oil before?
No, it just like...
You said he was the first one to refine it.
To make refined oil. So he would help them with the process of refining the oil.
No, okay.
I don't think that we need to go too much into oil.
All right, keep going.
Oil process. So this was the biggest oil company at the time.
Being curious.
And it amassed Rockefeller more than $400 billion.
Oh, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
That's in like how long ago?
This was 1870.
400 billion in 1870? Hold on, keep talking. I'm gonna look up how much that is now.
So his monopoly in the early 1900s, there was a bill that came along that broke up monopolies, and so his monopoly was broken up. But his family still has the control of the majority of the oil supply in America. And at the time of his death in 1937, he was worth about $340 billion and was considered to be the wealthiest person in U.S. history.
Okay, so 400 billion in 1800s to 2022 is 9,279,238,095.24.
And 24 cents.
Yeah, it's very specific. That is a whole lot of money.
Yeah. So beyond oil, they also made a lot of money in real estate. And many members of the Rockefeller family have historically held political office in the U.S., such as Governor of New York, Vice President of the United States, and a few senators. So some of the things that the Rockefellers have had a hand in is creating the UN, as well as Bilderberg, and those are some of the places where the most powerful people in the world get together and meet once a year. So if you think that there's like a global agenda, they are probably meeting at UN in Bilderberg.
Bilderberg.
Yes. And historically, the Rockefeller family has been an incredibly charitable and philanthropic family.
That's nice, since they got $9 trillion.
But that leads people to think that they are, in general, good people. So the idea is, oh my gosh, they give so much money away. They're such good people. How can they do anything bad when they're giving away money? They can.
You can?
You can.
Wow.
You can be charitable and also a bad person.
What? That's crazy.
So as Ethan mentioned, we discussed Michael Rockefeller in our episode that we did with the Opposite Sex podcast.
Hey.
And the question of what happened to him after he disappeared while working in a remote village off the coast of Papua New Guinea. So he was the son of the Vice President of the United States.
Wow.
And so there were a number of theories whether or not he had survived and after the disappearance, to whether he was eaten by cannibals.
Or became one, right?
Or became one, yeah. So he is one of just a connection that you might have had to them in the past.
Yeah.
So the Rockefellers also have a number of skeletons in their closet throughout the generations of their family.
No way.
So the first one is March 16th, 1951, Winifred Emeny. She was a member of the Rockefeller family and a well-known socialite, killed herself and her two daughters.
Oh my.
And the nanny came home and found them. One of the bigger scandals is from September 1913, in which 11,000 coal miners went on strike against a business that was owned by the Rockefellers and Standard Oil. And they went on strike over unsafe work conditions and low wages, which was what a lot of the strikes were about back then.
Seems fair, yeah.
So the workers and their families lived in housing provided by the company. And when they went on strike, they were all evicted from that housing.
Oh my gosh.
So they proceeded to set up tent communities around the area to continue their strike.
Wow.
So guards who were under the direct supervision of John D. Rockefeller went into the area, shot and killed the strike leader when he was working on truce negotiations, and then opened fire on the families living in the tent communities. So 19 people, including women and children, died as a result of this. And John D. Rockefeller was apparently asked about this after the massacre and after the fact, and said that he wouldn't change anything to stop the massacre. So that's another skeleton.
Yeah, that's a lot of skeletons.
We have another one. So in 1918, the Rockefeller Foundation helped in the creation of the Eugenics Society in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So, early in the 1900s, the Rockefeller Foundation had funded eugenics projects in America, and they apparently financed the German eugenics project and Joseph Mengele's research before he went to Auschwitz. So, they began their work in Brazil around World War I, and while they were there, they took particular interest in the public health works in Brazil, which were largely centered around eugenics at that time.
Not great.
So if you don't know, the idea of eugenics is to create the best human race, in your opinion, by forced marriage or restricting marriages among certain people, sterilization of undesirable people with undesirable traits.
Basically, traditionally it's been white people being like, we need to create a superior race. So white people need to only mate with white people, and we need to sterilize all other races.
Also, there's the idea of if a person is disabled or if they have
Yes.
a genetic anomaly.
Abnormality.
Yeah, a genetic anomaly, like certain
Yeah.
chromosomal conditions. The idea of getting rid of that portion of the population
Right.
is eugenics.
Not good. It's just not good.
So, the Rockefeller Foundation in Brazil funded projects that worked on removing the poor, disabled, and those with African descent from the country.
Bad.
So, but they're such good people, they give money away.
I like how with the Rothschild, it was like, this is what people think that they've done. And with the Rockefellers, it's like, this is what they did. This is like, we know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
My goodness. When did they buy 30 Rock?
I don't know when they bought 30 Rock.
What's their connection to that? I don't know.
It's one of their real estate holdings.
Interesting. Do they just own the building?
They own a ton of New York.
I know nothing.
They own a lot. Like, I was online and it showed all of their real estate holdings, and it was just like a list.
I've never been to New York.
You know, it is.
I'd love to see the rats.
I don't want to see the rats.
Big.
I saw a rat at a fancy wedding that I went to in Seattle, and
I don't think they're nearly the size. They're not nearly the size.
I
of the
was
rats
very
in New York,
afraid.
As far as what I've heard.
And people who say the rats are more scared of you than you are of them, that's not true. I don't think you understand how scared I am of them.
Anyway, let's keep going.
Anyways, so along with all of that, there is also the theory that the Rockefellers are part of the group of elites that are behind the New World Order. So we know that the Rockefellers have funded eugenics. We know that the Rockefellers funded some of Joseph Mengele's atrocious, awful projects that he did during the Holocaust. And we know that they tried to remove undesirable, quote, 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 people from Brazil and from the American population.
Not to mention murder and all that stuff.
At the time, the public health focus of eugenics, or the public health focus was largely on eugenics.
So bad. Bad.
I could go on about that for hours and hours and hours and hours because it is a topic that gets me mad.
Yeah, it's bad.
Anyways, so those are our first two families.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess keeping in mind, as we conclude our first part, we'll do the other three families in part 2. But keeping that in mind, do you think that these two families that we've talked about so far, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, are part of the global elites, are part of the New World Order, or that they control the world?
I mean, they obviously have a lot of power. Definitely not a fan of the Rockefellers.
I had to dig for this eugenics thing, because I was watching a YouTube video and they said this thing about the creation of the Eugenics Society in Brazil, and I was like, wait a minute. So I'm Googling.
Yeah.
I Google Rockefeller eugenics, and like the first page of Google was all of their charitable contributions.
So they kind of
charity covers up a lot of sins.
They've obviously done a lot of bad, and I think that I don't know. They're obviously very powerful. Like the Rothschilds are obviously very powerful in Europe for sure, and the Rockefellers seem to be very powerful in America.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean they're part of like this co-order? I mean, Rockefellers worked with Mengele, and the Rothschilds were Jewish. Don't really know how that combines. So
also, if you remember, if you think that the Illuminati is behind the New World Order, you could not be Jewish and a member of the Illuminati.
Right. So I don't think that they're necessarily a part of this New World Order, so to speak. But I do think that they're extremely powerful families in the history and currently in the world. So that's what I would say.
When I think of, like the Rothschilds, I mean, I think that they had a goal. They achieved that goal of having this power over the European banking centers. And they had that power in America with the centralized bank. I just think of like, the Great Depression and how when the banks like shut down, people were devastated.
Right.
And it created a lot of desperation in people. And when people are desperate, people rise up and take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And so I do think that the Rothschilds certainly have a lot of power. Whether their power is, less obvious than it was in the 1800s and 1900s. I don't know, but I do think they have a lot of power financially. And the Rockefellers, I think they clearly have a lot of power. I mean, there's something to be said about owning a lot of real estate and controlling oil. I mean, just thinking like about how devastating it is now when we see the gas prices going up so high.
Right.
That is a huge thing, and people are desperate for that, oil.
Yeah.
And then I also, when I think about eugenics, I mean, there is something to be said about wanting to create this elite race. And yes, it's obviously evil, but then you want to create this elite race. Do you want to create them for the purpose of like serving you and answering to you and looking like you?
Right.
And you think of like people had these conspiracies about, well, what if they can control people now? What if they can change people's DNA now? I mean, you don't know how far these projects are able to go now. Yeah. So I do think that these two families hold a lot of power. And if there was a new world order, which I think there is, I think that there could be members of these families represented. So let us know what you guys think. We want to know what you guys think about the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. Next week we'll be back and we'll be talking about the Morgans, DuPonts, and the Bush family. So we'll be back in 1 week and we will see you guys then.
Bye.
Bye.